But great start. Well, first, just to open it with a question, because I first knew you as, well, I don't know, obviously I knew you through Scouts and stuff like that. I mean, God,
I'm really worried where this is going to go already.
Skinny jeans, big boots. I remember you you were one of you. I mean, in my eyes, you were a cool Scout.
That was a fashion trend. So you wear that now, don't you? Skinny jeans and big boots.
I actually, to be fair, everything's wide leg these days, but it's more like. But no, I mean, but then at school, you were featherweight films to me. And that was your...
Well, that was more at uni, but yeah, I made stuff while I was at school.
I'm sorry, school, I mean, as in uni as well. In education. What, so it's been pretty quiet, but...
It has. Yeah, it was just finished uni, and it was one of those things where...
Where did you study?
I studied press and ed down at Falmouth.
Lovely.
Which was great. It was really nice down there. I try and go back there as often as I can, which makes me sound really old. And like I try and return to where, but it's just a nice place to go on holiday. And I made lots of stuff while I was down there, and it was very varied for the first 2 years. The course was designed in such a way where you made all sorts of stuff that as soon as you were trying to make it, you're like, I don't want to do this. I really don't like taking photographs of. Yeah. I mean, one of the projects that I did was like, I tried to find data for crime scenes where they were, and then work out from if it had been in the news when the crime had happened, and then go and photograph that scene in similar conditions at similar times as when that offence happened out on the street.
What?
And I thought, that's a really cool idea. And then all it is just me standing in the cold, waiting for like 4 a.m. to pass, taking photographs of like alleyways and streets and stuff like that. And it never made anything really interesting. It was one of those things where
they're empty, but like the implication is this is where this thing happened.
Yeah, it's like after everything settles, and it's like I think what I was thinking was that it was to do with the idea that crime can happen anywhere, but all it was just photographs of streets in the early hours of the morning, and a lot of time of me just trying not to fall asleep. Nice. And I didn't have a car, so I would just hike like across
town,
like up and down. I don't know if anyone's been to Falmouth, but it's very hilly. Like
I know I can, because it's in the boot, isn't it? Down in Cornwall.
Down in Cornwall, below Truro. So it's really quite hilly. And I thought, this will be a great idea. And then after about 2 nights of doing it, and I had like 10 planned, I was like, this is a shit idea. Not for the photos, but just, I don't want to do it. I just got to do all this stuff. So in third year, I sort of specialised into sort of adventure sports photography. I'd already been climbing quite a lot with the climbing club that was down there. And I think from Scouts, like you were saying, from the way where we met.
How many, quickly though, how many years were you at Scouts?
I joined when I was a Beaver, and I left when I turned 18. So like Beavers is what, 8.5? I can't really remember. So probably 10 years.
Yeah, I've got my little 10 badge somewhere.
Yeah, and I think, just to go off topic a bit, I think it was a really a formative part of like my personality was Scouts.
Oh, yeah.
I think it really...
I mean, to me, you're always going to be like slightly Scouty for me. Like, I'm surprised you're not involved in some degree still.
I don't wear the scarves and the waddles anymore, unfortunately. No. But no, it was...
Be prepared.
Yeah, exactly. Dib, dib, dib. But no, in terms of my work, like my creative work, in third year, I really specialised in adventure sports. And I often took some of my friends who were friends at the time, but I think I really tired them out by taking them. At one point, we did this film on Bozzy Ridge, which is an exposed sea cliff ridge, and we did 2 or 3 nights of shooting on this ridge. In one of them was like storm force gales, because we were trying to make an advert for these raincoats that we'd been given by a supplier to make a funny little advert for, and I think I got them to climb the ridge. I think it was like 9 times over 3 days, 3 nights over like, I think it was 2, like a week or 2.
What elevation is that?
Oh, it was sea level to like, I think it was like 8 pitches, but they were all very short, but it was all exposed ridge climbing. Yeah. So we're climbing it in the dark with head torches on, trying to do time lapses with motion tracking cameras.
That's cool though.
And then I was climbing it with them in the dark, all strung together, as opposed to belaying. We were just like all tied together. And it was one of those things where I thought, this is really cool. But then realised that I was leaning quite heavily on the on my friends to come along with me and do these dumb ideas, almost always in shit weather, never in good sunny weather, always in like hard to film, hard to light weather, but also hard to do the activity weather. So no, I really enjoyed doing all of that. But upon leaving uni, I think I didn't necessarily have the amount of drive that is required to enter such a saturated market. And I also didn't know anyone.
Yeah, I mean, I was the same kind of, I never got, like, I didn't even bother branding myself or anything. But I set up my LinkedIn when I dropped out and was like, right, my LinkedIn, like, I was like adventurer, photographer, like, you know, like videography, I can do all of this. But you realize that, you know, any guy who wants to start hiking and they want to monetize it or go outdoors, that's their
and I think
thing they go for.
It's one of those things where you need to know someone, but you also actually need to be really good as well to cut through the noise.
Yeah.
And it's a really, for lots of people, I think it's an ideal lifestyle of doing all the really fun adventure shit and then getting paid for it just by virtue of taking your camera with you. And I think, or, you know, video camera, or even blogging and writing about it. And I think it's one of those things where you've got to simultaneously be quite advanced at the activity that you choose, or quite good at, if you want to do all of the activities, you need to be quite good at all of them, be quite proficient at it. And then you also need to be able to make compelling content on top of that. And I think it's one of those things where I wasn't really willing to film or photograph myself, just because it takes it. First of all, it just takes ages. You go set the camera back, you walk back, you hike past it and all that.
I keep thinking, like, before a hike, I keep thinking I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And then I'm just like, I get out on the hike, I'm like, I can't bother. I'm just going to walk.
Detracts from the activity by having to think about what you're making. Like some of the stuff that I made, one of the films that I made that I'm quite fond of, and it's not necessarily the film I'm fond of, it's the trip, is that me and one of my friends, Jasper, rode across Dartmoor.
And I remember that one specifically. I really like that one.
Because it's so dumb, because we're on these 2 road bikes, and it was way before I knew about proper bike packing as you see people like Lael Wilcott's doing things like that, like proper bikes with proper bike packing bags. I had the idea of doing something similar, and I needed someone to come with me because I'm sure shit wasn't doing it on my own. And I got Jasper to come with me. He borrowed a road bike because his bike broke the day before we went, or I think we had to cancel it and move it to another weekend. And the food was all in a down bag that we bungee corded to our saddles, and bungee cords obviously just flex and bend. Yeah. And then we had 2 rucksacks, a rucksack each, with like sleeping bag and food. Mine had a load of like an absolute obscene amount of camera gear in it. And we did what was a 60-mile bike ride from Plymouth to Exeter across sort of through Bovey Tracy and all that, across Dartmoor. We did it in 3 days. And we didn't take any spare inner tubes, any way of fixing any punctures.
No,
I wouldn't have necessarily even known how to do it had we taken that. I do now, thankfully. But if we'd had any sort of mechanical, it would have been an absolute nightmare. But the fact that we then made it to the end, and then when we got to Plymouth, we hadn't put the bikes onto the train, so we had to kill time when we got there. And like we proper stank. We went to like the University of Exeter Wetherspoons in the Orangery, and we just ate like 3 gammon and egg meals from Spoons.
Oh my God.
Which I probably wouldn't be able to do now. But and then had like a load of beers and then got on the train home. But it was one of those things where I really liked the film, and I made a tiny zine and from film photos, so I took a little point and shoot film camera. Yeah. The stuff that I made from that I enjoy the most because it wasn't, with things like that Commando Ridge film, it was an advert, so it wasn't really a story that we were a part of. It was just the filming of something. Whereas documenting that trip, the trip was the thing. Yeah. And what I made just came out of it. Yeah. So much like when we went down to the Isle of Grain and climbed all over that fort and then down underground and all that, the content that I made out of that, which was it was only really visible on Instagram because of it was audio files and photos and videos laid over each other. Yeah. Because of what I made out of that, it was about the trip as opposed to the trip being there to create the content. And I think that's something that if I were to try and make more stuff like that, it would have to be because I've got a really good trip planned that I'd want to have a document of, as opposed to I want to make content, so I design a trip that is for the content. Yeah. And I think that's the difference between, it was a very long answer to your question of I made all this stuff and now I don't anymore. But I think it's because I sort of fell out of love with it and realised that it wasn't something that could sustain me financially for the rest of my life, because it was a simultaneous bit of I probably wasn't that good, probably didn't know the right people, and probably wasn't that good, both. And by that, I mean at the content part and also at the activity part.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a mediocre climber. I'm a relatively crap ultra runner, or I was. And I'm getting into cycling, and I'm pretty damn slow at that too. So I'm not good enough for the activity to be setting fastest known times. And then I'm somewhat unwilling at the moment, the way I view it, to spend the extra time that I'm also being slow at making the content.
Yeah. I had the same. I've had the same battle. I've literally never even tried to monetize any of my work because I always have this crippling fear that when you start putting that kind of pressure behind something you create, you lose the joy of creativity. But yeah, so like with my trips, like it was kind of like I would plan the trip because I'd want to do something, and then I'd take the camera along, and I like the recording would be like, or whatever I take pictures of, or whatever I record, or what becomes the project. I don't actually plan. The only one I really planned, and I did this with my family, was the Dash film. And unfortunately it's been taken down from YouTube because I just didn't care about copyright music. So I just chucked in all the music that I liked. And then like it was up for like 4 months.
And then someone struck it down.
It was Radiohead, fucking pricks. Their record label was sniped. So, and annoyingly, the Premiere autosaved has saved over itself.
Right.
So I can't go back. So basically, I think I'm putting it on like Vimeo or something.
Yeah, and it's still there.
It shouldn't get taken down, hopefully. But that was like, I mean, that was a proper passion project because originally I was like, yeah, it's going to be like 20 minutes long. I kind of wanted to do like, when you watch like North Face videos and like they have like a little interview in hindsight. Yeah. So on the last day, I interviewed all my cousins about like, oh, why do you enjoy Lake District? Like, because we always go out with my family, and it's all like my grandparents are a huge reason that I love what I love. So it was a lot of it was for their sake. And the only person who I really cared whether they liked it or not were my grandparents. Like anyone else can fuck off. Like if my grandparents, it's like,
Yeah.
But yeah, it turned out to being like a 50-minute project. Each day we were out there for 4 days. So each day was around about like 12 minutes. But it was one of my favorites. But like with the rest of mine, it is as simply as just turning up, and whatever comes to fruition is like what I record. Like a good example was kind of the end of last year, was like one of my first trips away after lockdown, and I went to the Brecon Beacons, and it was the first time I took a drone on the trip as well. So I got some drone shots as well, but it was kind of I mixed that project with clips that I'd filmed over lockdown just in and around home. So it ended up being this kind of transitional, like communicating a transition, as opposed to like my Crib Gok episode, project was literally just like, look at us, we're on a ridge, this is sick.
Yeah.
And that was the video, but no, like I'm always like developing. I don't know if you watch many people on YouTube, but like a lot of my influences recently have been like Will Derbyshire, if you know him. Yeah. Because I really want his static stuff is beautiful. And I think static is kind of like the way I want to go, like getting these like almost just like still shots.
It's like landscape video.
Yeah. I want to get more into sound design as well. That's my Monstera. She's
still there.
She's still there. But yeah, like I completely understand what you mean about like, and I funnily enough, I was talking literally to my therapist about this earlier today, how if you do like an advert, or if you do something for work or for school, you there's an element of pressure where you don't have the creative freedom to go at your own pace.
Yeah, because you've got a deadline, or you've got someone's demands to meet.
So you lose it. Like the whole like, I had no particular. Anything I've created has never had, apart from like trying to have some sort of schedule with the podcast, which has already fallen through. I've never had to create anything for a deadline, which I'm trying to keep. I don't really want to create things for deadlines. I don't want, like I said, monetizing it kind of feels like I'll lose the craft a little bit, but yeah, that's it. I do regret not taking any stuff, like any like a proper equipment to Isle of Grain. because that would have been very cool.
Well, it's still there. It'll always go back.
Yeah, well, yeah, hopefully, eventually. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been there like 6 times now, I think.
It's one of those places where, and I was thinking about this when I was trying to work out what we were going to talk about. I was thinking about this quite a lot, and it's probably a bit cliche to think that COVID's made everyone's worlds a bit smaller and everything. But I've got really into the idea of, initially when I first started out, I was thinking, I need to go on these like cool trips to get all this cool footage from places abroad or even just extreme places in the UK that people might not necessarily visit and things like that. Whereas I've now started thinking more about how like there's really interesting both personal stories but also landscapes right nearby, like Grain. It's over the Dartford crossing. It takes an hour-ish to get from here, and you pay your £8 for the crossing or whatever it is for the car. But it's not like the whole Isle of Grain's not really anywhere I've been before. It's so flat. The only thing that seems to be there is that power plant-y gasworks thing, whatever it is, and then that village where there's one shop that shut at like 3 p.m. on a Friday for some reason.
And it just had the weirdest people there. And that chippy.
Yeah, and there's one school and there's probably one teacher in it, and I imagine it's sort of place where you get born there. I don't know what you might work in the gasworks all your life and you die there. I'm obviously probably, if someone's from Grain and they're like, no, there's way more going on. There probably is, because we only passed through it on the way to the fort.
Yeah.
But it's one of those places where it's as if there's nothing going on, but people live there. So there must be, it's that idea that there's something there. There must be something going on that if you're passing through like we did, you don't see. And it's the same as when I've gone to like North Norfolk. If you go in the autumn and if you go away from it, like 10 miles inland from the coast or whatever, there's these tiny little flint cottage,
like the Wash and stuff.
Villages. Yeah, exactly. Or Kinsling. And it's one of those places where like, it's a bit like where we grew up. I often think there's absolutely nothing here. There's like, why would you ever want to be here? I'd always wanted to be somewhere else when I was growing up here, but there's still people here and people are still interesting. They might not be as interesting, or they might not be as interesting to look at compared to people in Shoreditch, because I don't know anyone here other than yourself that's got dyed hair, but or definitely not that colour, Matt. But no, yeah, I think it's one of those things where I think being somewhere for too long can blind you to what's actually interesting about that place, and that you don't need to go to the ends of the earth to go find something interesting. All you need to do is just find someone interested, and they're everywhere.
Yeah, well, I pulled like two recent projects during lockdown, like completely out my arse by just like filming locally.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, I was going cycling with Barney, and and I'm trying to make a theme of not trying to go into too much detail about the lockdown, because obviously it's the talk of the town still, so it's good to just get away from it. But literally, like, me and Barney were cycling every day. I was going out. You just go way out, and I've never even thought about going that far out before. And like, you're in like, I don't think of a good spot, but like we got right out to Halls Green, that area, and you're just completely like, you get to these places where you're in like between fields and it's dead silent, and it's like, oh, actually it's kind of nice here. Like, no, you're not going to get like the rocks of like Snowdonia, you're not going to get the beaches of like Cornwall, but there is, there's silver linings. And I think Hertfordshire's can be pretty, because I mean, especially like Suffolk and Norfolk, they're almost anxiety inducing flat. Like when I went for like a spontaneous drive out to Aldborough, just to kind of, because it's like one of the closest beaches you can kind of drive to. And I just remember on the whole drive just being like, there's like, it's just flat nothingness in the majority of Suffolk until you get to the coast, and then there's actually like stuff going on. Yeah,
it's like the sky's too big. Like when we've driven to King's Lynn before, and you're on a dead straight road that looks as if it's just straight forever, and it's completely flat. Yeah, it's a really weird. East Anglia's got a really weird environment. There was a really interesting ultra distance bike race called Further East, and the route was done by Josh Ibbett. I can't remember who organised it. I'm sure someone will tell me, but it was this 450k bike ride that started near Cambridge, touched King's Lynn, came through close to Baldock. I think it might have come through Baldock, gone up towards Bedford, round Grafham and Rutland Water and all that. And it was one of those, I'll try and get it up actually, because they described East Anglia as this sort of like, no one really thinks about it apart from they've got this preconceived notion of like, local yokels and tractors and stuff like that. And I imagine if you were to ride that route, you probably see a lot of local yodels and tractors. But there's a really wide range of terrain that is in East Anglia, which is right at the moment it's on our doorsteps.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where I've not really explored England fully. I've done the national parks through DOV and Stouts and stuff like that, but I've not been to Scunthorpe or Grimsby and stuff like that. And I've got probably ill-conceived, but pretty definitive preconceived notions about what Grimsby's going to be like.
Yeah.
But I've never been there. I don't know. The only thing I know about Grimsby is that let's make fish and chips dish of the day, or that funny advert to do with fishing and all that. But I don't actually know, so I've never been there.
No, it's just, I'm in the same boat. To be fair, like a lot of I had a caravan childhood. My grandparents had a caravan. My mum and dad got a caravan. So I've been about some odd places, but there's places that are like just weird, feverish elements in my childhood. Like I completely forgot the existence of the Tissington Trail until recently. And I was like, I've done that like 4 or 5 times with a mixture of my family and scouts. And, but yeah, like I remember like the first time I went to Birmingham back in like 2017, and just being completely like not aware of like this part of the world, like Digbeth. I didn't think a place like that existed,
Yeah.
But I'm like, and I'm very sheltered, like when I go up north, I go to the safe little kind of the most southern part, type of up north, which is Cumbria, where the majority of the people who live in Cumbria are either farmers that you won't talk to, or people who have retired and moved up there, who lived in like the home counties all their lives, so they sound the same and act the same. But like the first time I went to Snowdonia, it was a different ball game, because you do, apart from like Betsy Coed, a lot of that area is,
Welsh people that live there, and that's their lives, and they don't think of it as a place to visit like we might.
Exactly. And I mean, it's vice versa. Like people do. I didn't realize there's such an acclaimed like for Hitchin as kind of one of the pretty towns of Hertfordshire. Like especially when you think of southern Hertfordshire being like on the edges of London.
Yeah.
Our little North Herts section is actually relatively
quite nice.
Yeah, considered at least.
But I suppose as teenagers when we grew up here, we're probably not thinking about, oh yeah, it does look quite nice.
Well, yeah,
nice.
And that's another thing
very
as well.
Picturesque, isn't it?
Because like I have like an idea for a project recently. So I've recently picked up picked up last year, but that 6x9 camera on the shelf there.
Yeah. He's
a new boy. And I've done a test roll and it works fine, but I haven't done an actual shoot with it yet. One, because it's very expensive because the negatives are huge.
Yeah.
But 2, because I haven't found anything that's worth my time. Apart from the other day, I just turned a random, like down to a road I've never been to in Letchworth before. And it's this beautiful road where all of the houses are designed by like different architects. So now I'm like thinking, I'm trying to find a way, like how can I get in contact with a couple of these homeowners, and then do I want to start a photo book about architecture, because I've never done anything like that before.
You probably could just go up and knock on their doors, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
That's a pretty direct way of doing it though.
Yeah. Especially after lockdown, I think everyone's a bit more wary for stuff like that, but maybe not. But yeah, because I did like a little tiny, barely even a proper photo book back in like 2016 about the place where we stay as a family in the Lake District. And that was cute, but then I was like, all right, and then I'm going to do a proper one, and I haven't done one since. And that's kind of, because they're cool, and you've done a zine before.
I've done a few, yeah, and I made what is, in hindsight, the wrong decision of sewing them together. Doing like the paper bifold sewing.
I mean, they are. It's like the prettiest way to do it. But
yeah, but all of the. I mean, I handed them in for my uni, and I made a few that I gave to people that went on trips or whatever that I did, and they all had blood on them because I
just freaking
can't bloody sew.
That's kind of a cool aesthetic.
I thought it made it a bit more authentic. I definitely sweat on some of those jobs, and I had blood on them, but I don't think I cried for any of them.
That doesn't surprise me. But yeah, I do want to touch on grain as a whole. I kind of want to leave like a whole section of the podcast just to talk about, because we've been there twice, but obviously the second time.
We've been there for a day visit and we've stayed there.
Yeah, but a trip that I keep forgetting we did was our little Thetford 4x4 trip.
Oh yeah, so yeah, that was part of that was a commission to advertise. That was
Sunglasses.
It sounds dumb now. It was a commission to advertise some sunglasses, and we did it on the cloudiest, wettest day that there was. But it was just a day that we both had free, and you had a cute little. John, what was it, Matt?
Daihatsu Sport Track ELXI 1994. It was I miss it.
It was a beautiful little 4x4, and it was all. It's one of those other things where it was kind of rushed, like you were saying, to do with the commission. But we were trying to advertise. They were given to me, and they were reading the PR and reading all the product description and whatever. They were described as like these indestructible glasses. So effectively, they, I wouldn't say they fall apart really easily, but they're designed to, under impact, come apart in such a way that they don't break. Like the lenses were incredibly flimsy, but they were inside frames that were quite stiff. But then the arms didn't necessarily snap off very easily, but they came off in a way that you could put them back together as opposed to breaking. And we tried, I think what I effectively said to you was, I want to go on a 4x4 with this sunglasses, and I want to effectively break them. I want to run them over and slam them in the engine.
Well, wasn't that the challenge? They were like, try and break these glasses.
I want to try and melt them on the engine, and I want to, like run them over at high speed through mud and like throw them out a window and stuff like that. And we drove up, and it was a short day because it was winter, because that well-known time.
It was October.
Advertised, it was like 4:00. It was dark, and you did most of the driving, apart from when I drove for a very short period of time, and all we did was just run.
I found one green lane, which was actually a really cool green lane.
Yeah.
Like you could tell, like sort of twanging my microphone, bro. But like there was like motocross people. There was a couple of defenders, cyclists. It was quite cool. And we got stuck once. That was a bit scary, but it was really cool. And that was the first time I think I'd really put the car through its element. And like this is the first time I've done any sort of like at least even helped with kind of commission work.
Yeah.
And just trying to think up of ways to like I remember shutting the glasses in the bonnet.
Yeah. And then we ran them over at high speed. They proper like they were like, as soon as your rear tire left, they all just flew up in different directions, which looked great.
It was really cool.
And what else did we do? We were slamming them in the glove box.
Yeah. You
had a bit of a wheel spin moment to try and get them to fly off the dashboard and all that. But no, it was one of those things where it was effectively, it wasn't really even an advert. It was just a product video for the product page on the website of the people that were selling it, the retailers. And it was effectively to prove the point that you've got to go, like, if you need pretty indestructible glasses, here's an example of how indestructible they are. We've run them over, we've slammed them, we've thrown them around, they've tried to melt them, we've stood on them, we've done all this shit to them. And it ticked that box. It was a bit of only had to be a short little video, and we only had a short little day to do it. But it was a bit of a hoot, and it was one of those things where, because we were trying to break it, it was quite fun. Whereas sometimes I've worked with products where they're either expensive or they're potentially test products, or they're like prototypes where you're actually doing the opposite. You're like, oh God, someone's going to have to actually wear that, aren't they? Like, don't break the zippers, you put it on. But it was really interesting to do the opposite and be like, right, well, we've been sent these and they don't want them back. So let's absolutely wreck them.
No, that was really a really neat little trip. And I'm surprised that we didn't do much, because we're so, obviously, as a context to why we ended up reconnecting, because I don't think we didn't really speak in Scouts.
Well, we rekindled our friendship, didn't we?
I hated Scouts personally, if to really touch on that. Like, at least for like, I had like a kind of rebellious stage where at least once every Friday evening, the Scout, I can't even remember what you call them, but one of the leaders would be talking to me out the back and being like, you need to stop chatting back and all this shit. And I was like,
you need to sort yourself out, Matt. Otherwise, you'll never make a podcast or make a name for yourself.
Exactly. Well, I was only there, and I was only there for the wide games. And to be honest, there was I remember a part of it.
Only there for that's an advert for Sloughton, isn't it? I was only there for the wide games.
The wide games were sick.
You know what? I've used a lot of the knots in my time though.
Yeah, there are things
some of it did stay in my head. Not a lot of it, but some of it did.
Not making fire making.
Yeah. First 80 bits and bobs.
I can still do. Is it a square hitch?
Yeah.
Still do one of them.
Nice. I still do friendship knots and all my hoodies because I'm so lame.
So I built I built like an A-frame bushcraft
Oh, there you
den in Western Woods.
go. It was worth all of your Friday evenings,
Like
then, wasn't it?
2018. Yeah, and then literally I was like, after work, I just popped by there, lash another pole up. And I made it like 2 stories, so you could walk like.
Oh, right.
But like some of those shits, obviously. I mean, obviously,
Someone's
I
pushed
had
it
it coming
over
to me.
and-
Yeah, it got fucked. But no, like I think I had this weird thing where like all the scout, like the walking weekends and the like, what was it, Peak Assault and like stuff like that, all
Gilwell
just made
24.
me despise going in the outdoors.
Organised fun.
Yeah, and I didn't like the outdoors for like a good couple of years after I left Scouts, and then it was rekindled by the fact that like, you know, my childhood was in the outdoors, and so I don't think we really spoke much when we were there.
And then you helped me land a job.
Exactly. I can't remember.
So I came in to, I can't remember. Someone, it must have been you. I must have asked you about jobs in the local area, and you said you were at the Cotswold, or I just came in and I saw you and I was like, oh, I'll talk to Matt before I hand him my CV because at least I know who he is.
I'm pretty sure, because I'm pretty sure we met somewhere and you were like, I'm looking for work. Like maybe we met in the pub or something.
Yeah.
It was something, but yeah. And to be honest, like when it comes to like, this kid knows how to put a CV together. Like I remember, like no offense,
I had my name on it and my address.
Yeah, well, I like obviously I don't know if I can, but like we had a sea of CVs, and it was a no-brainer. Yours was just a no-brainer choice. You were overqualified, and I was over. We were both overqualified.
We were overqualified and underpaid.
That's retail. That's retail for you.
No, yeah, but I really enjoyed working there. I think I really enjoyed the people we worked with.
Yeah. I
didn't necessarily enjoy dealing with, I mean, it's like any job. If you don't have to deal with members of the public, then it's great. If you don't have to, you know, if we didn't have any customers and we just like took stuff off the shelves, put stuff on the shelves, and then that'll be fine. But I think that really made me get back into the idea of being outdoors. I think I took a bit of a...
Well, that's what, yeah, well...
I mean, that's what got us got us going to Grain, and that was... You mentioned this place down in Kent, and I thought, well, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. And so we just went.
Yeah.
We just organised a trip. That was the day trip one. And then we went to stay the night.
And I put that off for so long because I hated the idea of doing that.
It was pretty freezy. It was pretty cold.
To be honest, yeah. I mean, so I'd love to. I've always spoken about this experience. It's probably one of the most like pivotal moments probably in my life. Like literally, it's such a key.
Not spooning me in an old...
Yeah, exactly. Like getting cuddly. One of my pots still stink of tuna. I'm trying to wash the tuna.
I don't remember what did
you cooked tuna
for pasta dinner, or something.
And then like the next morning,
I hadn't washed it out because we didn't have any water.
Yeah, so I had to then have tuna flavored hot chocolate for breakfast. But anyway, so let's do context. So first, I remember we were crowded around a till about to close, and I think it was me, you, and Henry talking about like.
Yeah, you got it up on the computer.
And I was just going through my because I went there with my friend Matt Rahulik.
Yeah,
and he's a videographer as well, and he took his like, you know, he's very much DSLR wide angles, so he got like some really cool shots. And and you expressed interest because I think you wanted to stay the night from the get go.
Yeah,
and I was like, no,
I was at the time where I'd done a lot of bivvying and stuff in my third year at uni, and was still trying to continue doing that. But at that time I was still I've changed now, but at that time I still have in mind that there's nowhere worth going in Hertfordshire.
Yeah.
So I think I thought, there's somewhere else. We should go to this other place, wherever it is. We should go there and stay there.
Just head off. But yeah, that was really cool. And because we got chased off by the time. Was it with you? I think it was with you. We only had like 15 minutes.
Yeah, we arrived a bit late.
Yeah.
Sprinted across the mud, and then it's one of those places where you can see the tide coming in, and if you can see the tides coming in, it's already too late.
Yeah.
And we saw the tide coming in, and we thought, let's go, shall we? So yeah, scrambled down that really, really rickety ladder, and then sprinted across that sort of cobbly mud flat bits, and then went home. But no, yeah, I'd always thought it was a good idea to either stay there or stay somewhere down by the coast. And then we did was it with Aldo?
Yeah.
Yeah. We went down.
Yeah, well,
that was the same, trekking across the mud.
He came both times, I think.
Oh, did he?
I think so. I can't remember. Maybe we went just us two.
I think you've
No,
been
because we
quite
went
a
into
few
the
more times
tunnels
than I
after.
have.
I've been like 4 or 5
Yeah,
times.
I remember we went into the tunnels. We met people. Remember we saw.
Yeah, well, so
Were they in the tunnels or were they like, where are you going? We like slid down this hole.
they're the kids who showed us where to get in.
Yeah.
I was telling my parents this for the first time. They didn't even know I'd done this before because you know you'd have to like shimmy in and you like drop down this gap of rocks and then you have to like shuffle over that like a well effectively filled with water. If like the board snaps, you're like, you know, it's not a party.
Yeah.
But so context.
Makes it sound like some sort of Mario level or something, doesn't it? Or like
Yeah.
Crash Bandicoot.
It was really cool though.
It was
But
good fun.
I guess context for everyone. Isle of Grain's nothing. Well, as far as I know now, has nothing to do with grain.
No.
It's,
Was it? Is that why it's called that? Because the
Maybe.
village is called Grain.
Yeah. So
Maybe that's where they used to mine grain
between
and
it's between the River Medway and the River Thames.
stuff. Yes.
There's a nice big old. There's like 3 or 4 huge power plants. Kind of. There's like a
You
quarry.
can see one. And there's like an ore refinery where one of the pipes comes in. Or
Yeah,
tankers
it's
drops
very
oil off and stuff.
industrial, and
It's also very bleak.
if you get through all the industrial like and marshland at the very end, there's this little lump with a village on, and next to the village is a bunch of old wartime defences.
Yeah, land and sea forts, isn't it?
So it's called the Grain Tower Battery, I think officially,
Yeah.
and it's basically this old Martello fort that is out in the estuary, and you can only access it when the tide's out. And on top of that has been built World War One, and on top of that World War Two defences. So it's this whole shindig really.
Yeah.
And it was for sale at one point.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
It's the address is number 1 the Thames, which is pretty iconic. And yeah, so I found this through like, you know, those like Urbex forums back in the day. And so me and Matt went there, and that was like, I think we only had like 20-30 minutes on it as well, because predicting that the tide's scary because you don't want to get stuck on that thing if you're not.
If you've not got the stuff to stay there. I mean, even when we stayed there and we had all the stuff, even when it came in, it was like, right, well, that's it then.
Yeah.
We're
It was like,
gonna
I
be
remember,
here.
I remember when we got down and we were just on like the beach, our own little beach, and it was like, well, there's sea.
We're not getting off it.
Yeah, and that's the mainland. But
I hope everyone bought toilet paper.
yeah, so I'd been a few times, and you kind of go there, and there's like a really rickety ladder which is like covered
It's lashed onto
the side, and like it's like on an angle, and it's like slimy.
And then there's those stairs up to the next bit that are rebar, but they've sort of snapped. So the stairs are almost like ladder-like.
And all the metal's been taken off, so there's like no
the
railings
handrails,
on any of the pathways.
My dad said he'd listen to this, and he's gonna probably give me a call when he hears this and be like, "What the hell?
What on earth?
That's not what you told me you were doing at all."
But yeah, and then on the mainland there's like a sea fort, but was it with you where we tried to get to the one?
No, you told me about this. So that, and then you met a friendly fella, and he was like, "Oh yeah, just come back and give me 10 quid and sleep in it or whatever."
Oh, that's the Harwich one.
star-shaped
No, I'm not talking about Harwich actually,
right.
which I have the map for right there.
Oh,
That's
nice.
the Harwich Sea Forts, which I actually emailed him just after lockdown, being like, "Yo, do you need some help? We'll come bring sleeping bags and the barbecue."
Oh, and just clear it out.
Yeah, because they're trying to restore the whole thing.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, so that was the logic. Whereas like if you want to come and stay on the fort, then you can come help us clear up a little bit as well. But no, I'm talking about, and I can't remember if it must have been with you where we had some free time and we tried to walk out to like it was like along the conveyor belt.
Yeah.
And there's a big fort on the other side of the aisle, but yeah, couldn't get to that.
Didn't make it.
No, that would have been cool. That was huge. But no, so yeah, we bumped into those kids to try and find this. There's a land fort that's
underground
submerged
one,
in an old nature reserve, and we ended up in tunnels, which was quite fun.
Yeah.
And you had a honking big bag with you, and I remember
again, I was carrying way too much camera equipment for the actual job we were doing.
Sliding that bag through
the hole, and it only just fit, and then we had to slide in after it. It was like, it felt proper. Well, I mean, it was proper subterranean.
It was cool. That's like one of the surprising. I think I actually enjoy the tunnels as an explorer more, but the elements of like going out on the fort's more exciting.
I mean, there's definitely better views from the fort than there is from the tunnels.
Oh, 100%.
It was, yeah. And we can see out to Clacton, and you can see those 3 sea forts on off the Essex coast. You can see them on the horizon.
Oh, the red sea forts.
Yeah. And then, you can watch the Thames absolutely fly past down towards London. Watch the water like rip past and then rip past the other way. No, it was one of those. Yeah, it was one of those things that sort of reopened my eyes to the fact that you don't need to go millions of miles away to do anything remotely interesting.
It was just so unique, and I remember because I was really we did it for a day trip, and we met those guys, and then the drone flew over. Do you remember?
Oh, they were doing geocaching, weren't they?
Yeah, so there's a geocache on the fort, but then also, was it with you when that matey boy had his little drone with him, and then as he flew up his drone,
another drone
bigger
appeared.
Drone came from
I think it was
on land and flew there as well, and there was like this weird moment where there was 2 drones kind of eyeing us up, and it was like, okay, but it's an active spot.
And the same with the underground fort is not remotely blocked off. There's no sign saying don't go in there.
No,
it's obviously at your own risk sort of thing.
It's just a tiny little
it's
hole.
Just if
you can get through
if you can find it.
Yeah,
and we had kids tell us where it was, but if you can find it, you can have a good wander around. There's nothing interesting in there.
There's that main room which is kind of cool, and
but there's no
like
original materials
or
whatever. There's nothing really interesting.
There's nothing particularly.
Loads of cans of Stella and stuff like fad pots and stuff like that.
Big old crucifix drawn into the thing, all the exciting stuff. But they were calling like the entrances like Droppy and Slidey. I remember. They're like, "Oh, you guys trying to find Droppy?" And then like we were like, "I think we're on the same page." And they like guide us, and they was like, "Oh, you coming in?" And they're like, "No,
done that. Don't need to do it again.
We're not going anywhere near."
No, it was good fun though.
Yeah, but so obviously I put off going and staying the night quite a bit because God, just the concept. So just the concept.
Well, you put it off so much it became the autumn and it was cold.
Well, I don't remember being that cold. I don't, at least anyway.
It wasn't warm.
Yeah, but we timed the tides perfectly, I think.
We did.
Finally, which was thank God.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember whether because we must have got up early to get off it, no?
Yeah, we were up at 6:30. I had an alarm set for 7.
Yeah, and then we jumped off it and then went straight back onto land. But even then, like the village of Grain, it's just a weird little end of the world spot, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just, strange.
I remember we were walking back and there was some guy walking his dog in the morning. He was like, "You guys just slept on that?"
Yeah.
And we were like, "Yeah." He was like, "Oh, each their own."
I imagine there's probably quite a lot of people that go out and sleep on it, or at the very least, lots of people that go out and get the geocache. Let alone
I think people do stay on it because obviously when we got on, there was that carpeted room. So you got the main Mortello tower, which is just creepy, like the main base.
Yeah, the circular one.
Like as soon as it was dark, I was like, I'm not going down there.
Yeah,
let's leave that.
Yep.
And then and the tide was in, and then on top of that, there's World War I foundations, and then on top of that, and then
it's
to
like
the
a
side,
breeze block. Cubey building.
There's a World War II stuff, and you got the battery on the top. And if you go, I think it's like the 2nd or 3rd floor of the battery, someone's laid down some cardboard, some carpet. There was even like a little bin set up as well, which I thought was
and there
cute.
was like Coke cans that had been cut open so your candle would reflect more light and that.
Yeah. And so one of the big things about staying on this fort is which I heard from all of the like the reports online was like, you do not want to get caught on it. Because if you've parked at Grain, obviously you don't want to get caught because, getting arrested is not fun. But on top of that, if you've parked your car at the Isle of Grain car park, the Coast Guard come and take you off. They take you either to Southend, which is in a whole different county, or they take you down to Gravesend, which is at least like a £50 taxi. Yeah. And so that was my fear. So I brought that little candlelight. And that was like, that's all we got, I was like, right, no big lights, nothing.
Yeah, we just don't want anyone to come help us because we don't need their help.
Exactly. Like we're jammy. And I remember like there was a brief moment because I was like pretty anxious about the whole thing. But I remember like there was a brief moment when I noticed that, okay, the tide is in, we're on here now. And I was like, oh my God. But then like, I don't know, the rest of the evening just turned into this really it was almost relaxing for me.
Yeah, just chilled out.
But it was like, your little radio, that was such a good idea.
A little AAA radio.
That was great. Like they're having the classic FM on in the background whilst we were cooking up noodles.
It was very, very grown up, wasn't it? Very mature.
And we all sat up on the top and watched the tankers go by. But I remember like stuff like watching, because you're like the first bit of land where like the tankers, these boats are very close to you. And you can like feel like when you're sleeping. When I remember we were sleeping, you can just feel like these big,
reverberations,
low hums, and you look outside and there's this giant like container ship just like plodding by you. But I remember, I can't remember, we were watching the tugboats go out, and you could like the pilot boats, and they would go out, and like,
you don't meet them,
bring it, and then they pull them in. Because I was conscious, like, okay, one of these could be a Coast Guard.
I think it would have been fine. I mean, it's not people. I imagine it's frowned upon, but
yeah, I want to say if they turn a blind eye, if they even could. But like I said, we were running on candlelight like the whole night.
Yeah.
Aldo had his Nintendo Switch, so we played some Mario Kart.
Yeah,
and my laptop.
Yeah,
I think we watched a film.
It was very bougie urban camping, wasn't it?
I slept really well as well. I don't know if it was the sea breeze or something, but like I was between the boys. Yeah, maybe. And I just got cuddled up.
Yeah.
I remember the next morning, like just sitting in like nothing but a sleeping bag, just sitting on the very top of the tower, and just dog walkers just going by, and I'm just like, help.
Yeah, no, it was really good. But then, I was just about to talk about something. I forgot what it was. I was going to talk about that body film that I made, because it was quite very similar vibe in that I went up with my dad. Must have been 2 or 3 years ago now.
That was the inspiration, wasn't it? A little bit.
Yeah, it was it's sort of the same sort of genre of thing, isn't it? It's so bodies are these they're all over Britain really, but they're especially concentrated up in Scotland. Mainly in areas of natural beauty or national parks, but again, not necessarily. And they're volunteer-based huts that used to be old shepherd huts that are free for use. They're unlocked, and they're effectively used for refuge if the weather's really bad, or you can just stay in them. They're incredibly bare bones. None of the ones that we went in had any electricity. They're just empty shells of houses, effectively. And me and my dad went up to make a film, and my dad went mainly to drive me around and to pay for most of the stuff, which I'm very thankful for. Thanks, Dad. And we went up for about a week, and it was free. We had blue skies all the time, but I think there's footage I've got, which I don't think I put in the film, but is of a thermometer in the room we were sleeping in when we woke up, and it was like -3 in the room at like 9 a.m.
What time of year did you go?
It was probably this time, so sort of like late November. And it was unbearably cold. And we've had it was one of those trips where we were knackered because we weren't really sleeping that much. I mean, we were in one that was near Skye, near Diabade. And
how long was this trip?
I think it was like 7 or 8 days.
Yeah, that's
and I think we did 6 in a body and one in a B&B in Tongue, right on the north coast. And this one in Diabade we were in, and we were sleeping, instead of sleeping in what were meant to be the bedrooms, we were sleeping in what was the room with the fire, effectively. So usually sort of the kitchen, living room area. And then we were in this body, and we were both asleep. We'd had the fire on, we had all the doors shut and all that. And we woke up to this really ear-piercingly loud alarm. We had no idea what was going on. There wasn't a fire. I mean, there was a fire, but there was nothing on fire. And we quickly realised it was the carbon monoxide alarm that was on the roof.
Oh.
There luckily still had batteries in it. So we ran out, and we were like opening and shutting the door. All of our warm air went out. It was unbearably cold. It was one of those things where we were like, that would have been pretty shit.
Yeah.
That would have been bad.
Like, it was pretty shit that it was cold, but it could have been a lot shitter.
But we schlepped around Scotland. It was a long, I mean, it was probably even longer for Dad because he had to do all the driving as well as all the other nonsense that I had to do, which was like hiking to these places and carrying firewood and all that. But it was, it was a really weird film. The film didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. We sort of cut it short by a day because I felt like I got enough footage to make something, but it wasn't what I wanted to make. The idea was hopefully to meet people in these, just meet random strangers, like impromptu meetings, but no one was stupid enough to be going to these places in November when it was freezing cold.
So you didn't see anyone at all?
We didn't see anyone at all. They all have like little logbooks that you sign, and there would be people that had arrived like a couple of days before, or people that had been there like the week before. But we went, it was like a Monday to Sunday trip, and we just didn't see anyone whatsoever. And nothing really came of it. The only really astounding part of it was on I think it was probably the last night. It was at very least the last bothy we stayed in near Tongue and Thurso on the north coast. The absolute top of Scotland was it was really weird. It's the wrong time of year for it, November, but we thought we could see the Northern Lights like way over north towards like Shetland and Orkney. I'm almost sure that someone will say, yeah, it's never appeared in November whatsoever.
No, it actually has this year.
Or in November, like this time of year.
Yeah, people have spotted it even in Cumbria.
Oh, right. So I've got this photo that I took, and it's a long exposure to try and.
Is this the one with the red? You've got your red light.
The light. No, it's from exactly that position, but it's facing the other way.
Okay.
So I'll find it and I'll show it to you at some point. But it's got this like orange tinge on the horizon, and there's no light pollution out there because it's just the sea for 1,000 miles, and in the Arctic we're too far away from Orkney and Shetland for it to be Orkney and Shetland. That would be off to the right, and we thought it was, but.
Orange aurora borealis is quite rare, isn't it?
I mean, I'm colourblind, so yeah, it was like, a light. But no, it was one of those trips where what I'd gone in with this idea of what I wanted, and I found through uni, after uni, and this trip is a pretty prime example of it, is if you're relying on other people, especially if you're relying on other people that don't know they're relying on you, you're just hoping people are there. You can sometimes be, and it feels that way, is that you're sometimes just doomed to fail.
Yeah.
If you're relying on people, like there were films that I tried to make about people that were big into micro adventuring, like Alistair Humphreys style or Dave Cornthwaite or whatever. And I messaged someone that was really into it, and they were really flaky. And I said, I want to make this film. And they were like, yeah, sure. And then when they turned up, they said, oh, I don't want to be filmed. And it was a bit like, well, great, we're now in the middle of nowhere in Cornwall. You drove me here and you don't want to be filmed. Like, I can still try and enjoy the trip, but this was going to be a uni. I needed to do this for this thing. And it was probably a mixture of, I might not have explained it very well initially, but relying on people sounds very negative, doesn't it? Relying on people can always let you down.
Yeah. But, to make a positive spin, I think it forces you to be more reactive to
self-reliant. Yeah.
And self-reliant. But being able to react to a situation and get something else out. Like I was saying with my trips where I don't have any initial, I have a vague idea of what I'd like to do, but whatever carries on the trip will unfold. I think a really good example is a North Face video called Life Coach, which is basically, it was Alex Honnold and Renan Ozturk, and Renan's probably my favourite climber of all time. Yeah. And the pair of them, they were climbing Mount Dickey for the second time, setting a new route. But the time of year they went was horrendous, and they were stuck in a tent at the bottom of the mountain with, like an 8K camera, and they couldn't climb it because it was just the conditions are terrible. So they just ended up reflecting on life, talking about their feelings and stuff. Hence why it's called Life Coach, where basically the pair of them kind of compared, Renan's like an older climber where he's focusing more on the craft of art, videography, but then Alex is binary, I'm going to climb until I die. And it's really cute. And then they reflect a lot on the previous trip and how Renan, even in a couple years, his skill level had decreased just because he's aging. Yeah. But that's a prime example. That's been my inspiration of whatever could come up in a trip, try and get that out of it. Because I remember you changed the grain trip, what you wanted to do with it. I think changed several times. Yeah.
I had this idea. I can't even remember. I had this idea at the time of what I wanted it to be like, and then it changed, and then it was at the time when some of the people that I'd studied with were creating these, using the, I'm probably use all the wrong terms, using the multi-page function on an Instagram post. So being able to flick through more than one photograph on one post. They were using that in a way where they had multiple photos stretched over it. And then I sort of, thinking more in a video sense, thought, well, I can have one background image that stretches across these 5 pages, and then have a mixture of photos and videos that you can scroll through. And then each video will relate to audio that I've captured during that video, or audio that I've captured supplementary to. So the first shot is a photo of the battery, and then of the radio that we took, like you were mentioning earlier. And then that video has the audio of the radio playing. And then I've done, like you were talking about earlier about mixing, I've added some, I think I added wind and sea
You
related
added
noises.
like, those sea bells, like
Yeah. So
over here, and I
then,
was like,
like a buoy or whatever. But obviously,
I did not hear that.
yeah. So journalistically, it's not necessarily okay. But it was adding to that
it
idea
adds
of
to the
adding
space.
to that
I've been
idea of
doing it a
mixing
lot more
yeah.
recently. Like I have, like with my lockdown videos, I've been putting in like if I've been in a field with overgrown grass, I've stuck some crickets in the background or something.
Yeah.
So I completely understand where you're coming from.
I can't remember when it was. I think it might have been the body film, but I added audio into that because the audio recording equipment that I took wasn't overly great because I was ideally going to be recording the audio of people talking to me and not nature and things like that. So I didn't take a really, really good sort of field recording equipment. And so I overlaid for one of the shots bird song that I found, and it was a British bird song file. So I thought, yeah, close enough, that'll do. Whacked it on. And then one of my lecturers, might have been Tom, had said, oh, that's really weird. And he played it again. He was like, oh, that's really weird. And I went, oh, what's weird? And he was like, I don't think those birds go anywhere near Scotland. And I was like, oh, right. Well, yeah, they probably don't. They probably
Busted.
don't. It's probably, someone else. So I had to change it. And so I think journalistically, it's that line between making it look and sound good.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't trying to tell a story, and it wasn't trying to tell like a non-fiction specific story. It was just nice shots. It was like you were talking about earlier, like landscape shots of bodies and their local area and stuff like that. So I feel like I could get away with it. But if I was trying to overlay, like if I was doing some sort of weird news story about a man who hates birds or doesn't believe birds are real, and I've got footage of a blackbird, and when it opens its mouth, the sound of an eagle comes out. Yeah, you're stretching it really, but yeah, it's.
I mean, you're better off doing an eagle in Scotland because there are eagles up there.
Oh, I wish you told me that 3 years ago when I was handing it in for my final piece at uni. Yeah, it would have been really useful. Thanks.
I mean, I don't know if they were there 3 years ago. I think there might have been a recent introduction, but I could be wrong. But no, I try and always go for the feeling of like like a lot of my feedback is always like your stuff is so candid, and I'm like that is exactly what I'm trying to achieve, but half the time it's not candid.
Yeah.
But like I think works of candid stuff is really like because you can get spur of the moment situations. But like with the lockdown video, I was pulling sound design from all sorts, and I got inspired. But I don't know if there's twins, aren't they? Jack's Gap, but Jack Harris he did one of my favorite videos called Headed East, which is basically him being like, being a YouTuber is toxic as fuck. I'm going to get the Super 8 camera and I'm going to travel across Europe.
Did he do it on a motorbike with his friends?
Yeah. So
I think I've either seen it or heard about it.
I'm pretty sure
seen it.
I'm pretty sure we both watched it on a lunch break at Cotswolds.
Oh right, okay. Then yeah, we'll have seen it.
But because he obviously uses a Super 8 and Super 8 don't make sound, so a lot of his sound has either been field recorded or he's been splicing sound from elsewhere.
Yeah,
which made me realize, why the fuck am I running stock sound on all my stuff?
Yeah, from a shitty microphone built inside a camera.
Yeah, but now I do. I mean, I do have like a semi alright. I've got a little Rode shotgun boy, but like even then, like I could be getting some naughty field recording. Like my friend Chaz, I've been meaning to ask him if I could just have access to all his stuff, but he lives down in Kent. He's a big field recorder, and he's got all the kit. Yeah. So like high quality, good stuff, which I could have access to, but just haven't done till now. Yeah,
I mean, I used to use a Zoom H4n, which is I think has been superseded by the new Zoom H5, but it can take two. This is getting really nerdy now. It can take two XLRs, Matt. You should borrow it at some point. It's really good.
Two XLRs? Mm-hmm. What? As in, like, I don't know what you mean by that.
It can take two XLR inputs.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. No, I mean, like this.
Like that, but it's not connected to a laptop.
I should have borrowed that for the fucking podcast, mate.
All right, well.
I think that's... Is that the one?
You've got that now, so...
Yeah. I think I know. Is it the little handheld thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the one. It's got the little... Has it got the little cross...
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the one. Little crisscross mics.
It's the sort of stuff that people listen to this podcast for, isn't it?
I mean, whatever they get, you can't be fussy when you listen to
if you've come this far, if you've listened to us talking nonsense for this long, then you've done pretty well.
Well, I mean, I've managed to do two kind of adventure-esque podcasts back to back because I spoke to Barney last week, and he's who I go with for a lot of my like big hiking videos. And
the stuff I don't get invited on. Yeah.
That'll
be it.
Sorry, No, I mean, we still, and I think I keep touching this, we do need to do more together, but now you're down.
Well, now that you've got a bike, we'll do a bike ride together.
Oh man, I've got bike anxiety at the moment. Actually, I don't have a bike. That's a lie. I've been using my dad's, but I don't think he'll stop me because even though it's fit, like my dad is like 2 or 3 inches shorter than me, so the bike is just about too big for me. No, oh no,
too small for you.
It is a bit too small for me. But
I can't imagine being smaller than you. I love being taller than you.
No, yeah, fucking 6'5".
No, exactly.
Weapon. But yeah, I think it is really interesting what you, and I'm just putting way back now, but like to what you get out of trips. And like, I mean, even like when you take trips now, are you consciously like, I could be making something out of this?
Yeah, I think that sometimes. Most of my trips recently are more holidays than like quote unquote expeditions.
Yeah.
Not that I've ever been on like a proper one, but you know, so I don't really think about it much when I'm on holiday. But I mean, I've been doing a lot more gravel riding and like off-road cycling and stuff like that. And I keep thinking of stuff like I was listening to it on the way here actually. I don't want to say her name wrong. I was listening to a podcast on the way here from the Lael Wilcox's girlfriend, which is unfair to just say that she's her girlfriend. Her name is, and I'm almost definitely going to say it wrong, Rudile Caladaiti.
Jeez.
So she, I don't know if Lael Wilcox is a very famous Alaskan ultra cyclist, ultra bikepacker, stuff like that. And Rue is her girlfriend, wife now actually, who makes almost all of the content for her. So her films on Rafa, any films about Lael on Rafa, this Rue person makes. And the podcast is really interesting because she used to be a photojournalist for the Anchorage Daily News. And it's all about, this is a very long-winded answer to your question. And she was been talking to the fellow on the podcast, which is called The Adventure Stash. It's Payson McLevin, whose name I've also probably said wrong. And she was talking about how she is simultaneously girlfriend and supporter at races, but also documentarian. And it's that line between the two. And so I sometimes think that about like me cycling. I haven't yet found anyone that's up for all of my dumb trips that I've got planned, all my silly little things. And even if I did, I need to think about whether I'm good enough to do the trip and carry all the film equipment and things like that. Like me and Harry and potentially Jack, two of my friends, are planning on doing what most people would probably think of as like a very organised ride, but we're organising it ourselves. Would be London to Paris in 24 hours. And so it's
a channel job or a ferry job.
It'll be a ferry from Newhaven to Dieppe, so you can sleep. So you cycle from London to Newhaven, which is near Brighton. It's like 60 miles in like 7 hours, which is eminently doable, under 10 miles an hour. But then you've obviously got to try and sleep at some point, and then you get the 11 p.m. ferry, get off at 4 a.m. in France, and then you've got exactly 12 hours to 100 miles. But again, if you've only had 4 hours sleep, that's quite hard. You'll need to sleep at some point. You need to stop and eat a lot.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where I've not done it before, and I have looked high and low for any sort of even a relatively useful YouTube video that isn't just a GoPro attached on some handlebars, like an actual like, we've done it, here's how you should do it, or here's how we did it, here's literally, I'm going to explain it to you, as opposed to you work it out from the videos. And then website wise, there's only, unless you want to pay 500 quid and fundraise 500 quid to raise money for a charity, there's not very many websites in the way of like, here's a route, here's the way of doing it, here's where you can stay, here's to do the next bit and all of that. And so I would be I'd be really interested to make either a zine or a tiny little film or something that made it easier for people who wanted to do a trip, specifically that trip, because that's the one I'll be doing, make it easier for them to understand how it works. And it's something that Harry, who I went to uni with, I'm a great admirer of, and I'm a great admirer of his work. That's something we've spoken about recently, the idea that you don't need to make something amazing. Sometimes you just need to make something useful.
Yeah. And
so one of the things that I made at uni, which is sort of, I've changed my opinion on it in terms of whether I actually want it to do the thing I wanted it to do initially, I made a little wild camping guide for Cornwall, which I thought was a great idea. Go wild camping a lot, take a load of photos of these wild camping spots.
Like a blog or like a town?
No, it was a little book. It was like a 65, 68 page book. Rosie helped me design it, which I needed. And
shout out.
Yeah, good job. And it had Rosanna Hyton on Instagram. And it had this really sort of, I tried to bake in like this silly sense of humour about it. I did like a double page spread on like how to be a really shit wild camper and like don't do it, don't leave your rubbish, don't be an idiot because you'll ruin it for everyone else. And then I sort of thought about trying to push it a bit more. Someone that I'd worked with previously was thinking about potentially stocking it or having it redesigned and rebranded into a different type of guide that was still wild camping related, but they'd already released other guides. So it was effectively take the content and repackage it. And I sort of came to the conclusion that if people want to go wild camping, they should sort of find their own way.
Yeah.
Not in an exclusionist sort of way. Like if people need help, then they should ask people. But I think the idea of publishing something and promoting something that effectively gives people who are either lazy or unwilling to think for themselves places to stay, I feel like the people that would use that guide are potentially less likely to look after the place that they find themselves in. Whereas if you really want to go wild camping, you would find a friend that has done it before, and then you would get advice from them, or you would just go do it and find your own places. And I think it's one of those things where the outdoors can be a privileged sort of exclusionist place. Because first of all, you need to spend a fair amount of money on the equipment. Even if you're buying relatively inexpensive equipment, there's enough equipment that you need to buy that it becomes expensive. And so I think it was that catch-22 between I want people to enjoy the outdoors, but I don't want people to enjoy the outdoors irresponsibly. And so it sort of disappeared, that whole guide. I've got a couple of copies of it. I've still got the InDesign file, I've still got all the photos and all the text from it. But it's one of the things where I had a bit of a change of heart over we should get people outdoors to we should get people outdoors in a responsible manner. And I think that's sort of all I want to say about that. But this guide for London to Paris, it's not irresponsible. It's just a ferry. You get the Eurostar home. Yeah. You're not going into wild areas. It's entirely, well, the route I'm doing is entirely on road. I'm sure there's a gravel route out there for someone. But yeah, it was one of those things where I really thought at the time, I thought this is such a great idea. It's going to get people outdoors. And then I sort of, when I was going to these places to photograph them and document them for this book, I was finding a load of rubbish there from, I presume, people that had stayed there previously. And I thought if this thing gets traction, and I was under no illusions that it was going to actually get traction, but I was thinking long term.
Yeah.
Even if someone picks it up, even if one person stays at one of these places and leaves a load of rubbish, then I've effectively facilitated that. Whereas I'd much rather people just contact other people and do it naturally and organically and not over publicize it, which is something that podcast I was just talking about with Rue was really interesting. I've listened to almost all of it. I'm hoping that I don't completely change the meaning right at the end that I haven't listened to, but it was all about how in the bikepacking community at the moment there's some real strong opinions about documenting routes that are on bridleways, or in America are on like sort of tenuous their versions of rights of way, or where they don't necessarily have the same right to roam rules that we have, let alone we have up in Scotland. And it was that question of by publicizing and pushing these routes, are we potentially diluting the people that want to do it, that really want to do it, like the real hardliners? And it's that line between exclusionism and preservation, which I think is hard to tackle anyway, like the John Muir Trust, or even things going up, like some of the paths going up some of the lesser peaks in the Peak District, some of the easier ones, they're being ripped to shreds because people are going up it and they're not thinking forward about sort of leave no trace principles and path conservation and stuff, which is fine because they don't know about it. But it's that mixture between you have to educate them about it, but you don't want to over-educate them before they've learned how correctly to do everything.
Well, this definitely opens up and it's always something I think a lot about, which is kind of the question of like enabling people, and especially because I think there's been a wave, especially post-COVID, of people going into the outdoors. You know, like Snowdon, you've got 3 or 4 hour lines. You got the charity Men the Mountains who are just trying their best to get these really popular mountains, your Scaffold Pikes, your Snowdons, your Ben Nevises, your Helvellans, all properly rooted and maintained, because there has been this onslaught, and it is this horrible thing where I do find myself wishing people didn't go out in the mountains as much, because it just takes a couple of the wrong type of people for it to end up being a bit of an issue. And I think a lot of that is like, I think recently with boffies, for example, the Scottish boffies are obviously quite remote, but there's like 1 or 2 in the Lake District. Yeah, you've got Dubs Hut and I can't remember the other one. The other one's a nice one as well. And they're relatively near each other, but it's just like these places are now literally just seen as, you know, they're supposed to be refuges. Yeah. And now people are like, oh, we're just going to go for a jolly and we're going to stay there for a couple of days. I'm like, no, you stay a night, you leave a packet of instant
in there,
noodles.
you've got to do,
yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's what you were hoping for when you went on your Scottish buffet trip.
At least someone, but
it's November. And I was going to touch on something kind of where it relates home for me, but it's this kind of situation where I did a gear guide, and I was going to start a gear guide series on YouTube because, you know, like I'd waffle all the time at Cotswolds, and equipment head, not a gear head. Yeah, exactly. Like, so I did like a video, and I was got halfway through it, and I've got like the files and stuff still there, and I was like, I had the same thing where I was just like, well, I mean, one, also, I hate the sound of hated the sound of my own voice.
And now you have a podcast.
Now I have a fucking podcast. What is the irony there? Great. But at the time it was just like, I can't be bothered, like, to like narrate over me walking around in my, like, oh yeah, I've got my Archer's jacket for the winter, my Teton Bros jacket for the summer, and like the base layers and all this, you know, like talking about like all this, basically just dribbling all of the training we got whilst we were at Cotswolds, but doing my own little spin and making it consumable. But yeah, like there was a little inkling of that thought of like, should I? And to be honest, like, it's mostly laziness that stopped me from doing it, but that was a question I asked, and I remember what I was going to say. So obviously, like, as a kid, and when I wasn't into the outdoors, I was into urbex quite a bit, and I was very much like, urban exploration is very cool. It's the edgy type of hiking, pretty much. It's like, that's literally all it is, and it's lame as fucking, like, I mean, I too still would enjoy it. Like, I do enjoy doing it, and it's quite fascinating to find certain spots. But I remember initially there was a website, I think it was called like 28 Days Later or something, and they had a map which had each place pinned. But only recently they've now removed that, and they almost promote the idea of not revealing where places are,
just finding them all,
just because it's like, what, like, we don't. And I get that, but like a lot of the places I have been to, I've only been to because I've known of them through this website. At the moment now, my luck is more, I have to just go on Google Maps and find something that looks, you know, find an overgrown road leading to
a building that you can't quite see. And then go see what it is.
Go check it out, which is sometimes, and you do get, that's when you got to learn to get used to disappointment, because a lot of the time you do turn up and it's either been demolished or you can't get to it, or like CCTV or security see you like straight away, and they're like, out you get, and it's like, oh great, I drove 2 hours to get here. But that's like the same thing where I think the community is now very sheltered. And I mean, I left the community like on Facebook and stuff like that, just because, you know, they got really elitist about it, and they were like, oh, like I was like, mate, I've been urbexing for like 5 years, but it's like some old geezer who's been doing it for 20 years was like, oh, you're still new and you're careless, you kid, like you can fuck off. And I do get concerned that the same thing will happen with hiking, and it kind of does. Like, especially with like, so obviously Arc'teryx as a brand has become very popular amongst the youths. And then you've got like, I mean, I had it had it personally. I was on a train in London,
Mm.
and I was wearing I think just wearing like my Arcturus jacket, and I was like, excited little kid, like a brand new jacket as well. And then there was another guy with literally the exact same jacket as me. He looked like ex-forces or something, and I kind of looked at him. I was like, oh nice, we have the same jacket, bro. And I was with my friends and stuff, and he just like kind of quietly nodded, and then was like, yeah, well, I probably at least I use mine.
Mm.
And I was like, ooh, that's not what I want to become.
Yeah.
That's the line where, like, as much as I'm like, oh, I hate the fact that there's big lines on Snowdon, but like I can go and still probably climb High Style, or
Yeah, there's always other places to
there's
go.
like I know all the other
And I suppose the
places
people that are into the mountains have probably already done Snowdon and probably don't need to do it again.
exactly.
If they don't want to. I was just looking up while you were talking about someone that was to do with that that idea of urban exploration. I've read a book during my university days called Explore Everything, which was by a professor called, I think he's a professor now, Bradley L. Garrett, and he was an ethnographic researcher that was based at Royal Holloway at the time, and it was he sort of embedded himself in with a group of urban explorers, and the book was it really focused on the ethics of urban exploring and also the ethics of trying to prevent other people from doing it, to dilute what is a very niche activity. So yeah, if anyone's interested, it's a really good book.
Well, it's also,
and I think I used it in one of my essays when I was at uni.
It also reminds me of did you ever watch Nightscape on YouTube?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
He's a kind of he was that wave of where everyone was doing exploring with and then name and or like and he had Nightscape where he was getting on roofs in London and stuff. But like another crazy example of this was when he was in the Paris catacombs. And his guide, like last minute, stole his camera and then ran off and left him in there. And there's this like, and I was in a group of they call themselves cataphiles, which is really kind of hilarious. But
really into cats.
Yeah, and I remember that they were like, they were sharing the video amongst themselves, being like, oh yeah, this guy was such a good guy for doing this. Yeah, like we hate like people finding out about, and I kind of get it because catacombs isn't quite an abandoned thing.
I mean, I've been in there on a trip.
Have you actually?
Yeah,
as in like a guided tour, or if you
just pay like 10 euros and they take you down.
Yeah, how was it?
It's all right. There's lots of skeletons, lots of skulls. It was probably not the place that you're probably not the same part of the catacombs.
Well, that's the thing, and there's
it was like the touristy bit. But no, yeah, it's pretty cool. But I don't think I need to see any more than that.
Yeah. No, so he was, because obviously it's a lot of people live there in them. So I think that was the issue, is like, he was effectively walking through people's hallways and like, there could have been someone like living in the next room.
Yeah.
But yeah, that opens the age old question of like, could we? And it's the same with, I mean, I was very anti in the mountains when I first found out about the charity. I was like, no, we should be leaving these mountains. Like, we're shipping
to
over,
degrade. Yeah.
Shipping over Norwegian rock. And then I went to Lake District the other day and I found out, I mean, Douglas firs aren't even native to this country. And they're everywhere in the Lake District.
I mean, the environment has to keep changing, doesn't it? And it has already before we were around.
Yeah.
Not me and you, but like,
I mean, you can, and
conservationism was around. It's just that as the advent of more and more people going into mountains or even any areas increases, the need to protect them and to replenish what is being degraded also increases.
Yeah, very good take.
And whether that's Norwegian rock or, chalk from Western Hills.
Yeah.
As long as it gets fit, it gets fit.
Douglas firs. Yeah. It's the same with like kind of with animals and stuff at the moment as well, because I know, did you know they're reintroducing bison to Kent? How weird is that?
You say reintroducing, I presume like there have ever been bison in Kent, but when was I can understand more like lynxes to Scotland.
Yeah,
that makes more sense. But bison to Kent, so what? Just like in Western Woods, just having them on like fields and stuff.
I don't.
Are they going to survive in Kent?
There's like several levels of
bison
introduction to like how you. So I don't know, because obviously there's like they're monitored, they're kept on owned land and fenced in.
Yeah.
Or they're like tracked, or they're just let in. I can't.
So what, it's going to be like Dartmoor? It's going to be like bison walking down high streets, and
I don't know, but I'll Google it so I have a little bit of logic to what I'm talking about.
They got horns, bison.
No, they're the big boy. They might have light horns, but nothing. I mean, we do have cows. They have horns as well.
Yeah, but they're not usually wild cows. I mean, I went down to Exmoor and they had wild ponies and they were quite cute. But again, they also don't have horns. So I'd be less worried about being charged by a pony.
Bison will be introduced to the UK woodland to restore an ancient habitat and its wildlife, conservationists have said. It's a £1 million project led by the Kent Wildlife Trust.
How many bison does £1 million buy?
I don't know, but they will be in the spring by spring 2022, and the bison will be within a 1,200 acre area with other animals grazing, such as ponies.
I know what we're doing next time we go to Kent.
Check out the bison.
Bison.
There's not much in Kent, so that'll be something to do.
Bison.
Yeah, there's no indication of exactly how much they would be. But yeah, I mean
1 million is at least more than one, but probably less than 1 million bison, isn't it? I imagine the price of a bison is between £1 million and £1.
Yeah, I'm going to guess that's like at least 20 bison.
20 or what's that? Yeah, like 20 or 30 bison.
Patches of earth created by bison dust bathings are good for lizards and rare arable weeds.
Are you ready for a potential dumb question?
What?
Do bisons generate milk? Are we going to be able to be putting bison milk in our protein shakes? I feel like that's going to be like a proper testosterone thing.
Bison milk.
Or I know bison burgers will be all right.
Does buffalo milk or buffalo cheese come from bison? A, the answer is no. Water buffalo are a separate species and are not related to bison.
No, I'm not asking for buffalo milk.
Yeah, so I think bison don't. That's the implication. People thought buffalo were.
Bison don't have udders.
Bison are not milked commercially for a couple reasons. And
the main one being, who would want to drink it?
Main one being they're bison.
Yeah, and they've got big horns. Don't want to fight that. But no, yeah, I think we've touched on some interesting parts of stuff. Yeah, if it's felt like a bit of a catch up.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. It's been an interesting reflect, and I think you're like another guest who we could talk about anything. Like I really like to go into the detail of like how you saying how scouts shaped you compared to shaped me, and we could go in that route.
Just tie a lot of knots, don't I?
In it, future. I want to talk about future hikes. If anything, I mean, do you have anything planned?
Well, I mean, I'm planning stuff for next year actually. So London to Paris in 24 hours will be quite fun in March. I want to cycle the Pedars Way.
So there's a lot of cycling.
It's a lot of cycling, yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind. I live on the Grand Union Canal. I wouldn't mind running into London. It's about 40 miles. It'll be quite fun. But yeah, nothing overly hike wise. I might hike. I want to ride the Pedars Way first, but I definitely might hike it. I think that's 80 miles. It goes effectively from Thetford-ish, just below Thetford, to King's Lynn, where it joins up with the North Norfolk Coastal Path. So my dad was telling me about this. So if you start the Ridgeway in Avebury, you can walk the Ridgeway to Ivanhoe Beacon, and then he's probably going to tell me I'm wrong, but I think it's the Itchenwood Way goes from Ivanhoe to this place near Thetford, and then the Pedars Way goes from this place near Thetford to King's Lynn, and then you can do the North Norfolk Coast Path. So you could effectively walk from Avebury, which is past Swindon that way. You could walk all the way to Cromer, just along one connected national trail. But the Pedars Way it's 80 miles. It's effectively flat. It's on an old Roman road, so it's relatively straight. It's a bridle way, so that's why I can whack my bike on it. I'm pretty sure the whole thing is, or at least 90% of it is. And then I was planning, so cycling to King's Lynn, turning around and then cycling back. And then, I've done some North Norfolk routes and stuff like that. But I just want to do stuff. I want to keep doing things, and if I take cameras and make stuff, then great. And if I don't, then great.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to put any pressure on because there's no point.
Exactly. Like
doesn't help anyone.
The only goal I really have until like before the age of 30, I want to get like every Wainwright. So any trip that involves me ticking off a Wainwright, I'm open to doing. But there is the next tier up to Grain Tower Battery, which is Stack Rock Fort in Wales. It's a 3-gun fort built in the 1850s. And
is that tidally sea based?
No, it's a kayak job. It's off the coast completely.
I've got a kayak.
And I've got a kayak as well.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's not a sea kayak, so I don't really. But yeah, it's literally like this big tower on a little lump of rock.
It looks like the batteries in the Solent near Portsmouth.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah,
same. It's the same. It's same as there are 2 of those batteries in the River Medway as well. I'm annoyed you can't see any of them from Grain. At least that I remember. But yeah, I'd like to do that.
But Napoleonic, is it?
Yeah,
There's the ones in
1850s. I don't know if that's
The
Napoleonic.
ones in the Solent and Napoleonic. They sold one of those recently.
What's that?
They sold one of those recently.
Did they?
Yeah. There's
Oh wait, no,
one
the
of
big
them,
three
one of
ones.
Yeah, one of them's a hotel. One of them is a
Like just
private
a pad,
private residences.
and then one of them's pretty much.
One of them's empty,
docked.
and they've got planning permission to make it a residence, but they've sold it.
Yeah. No, I did see that because I think 3 of them. They're all 3 of them are for sale, apart from the hotel. No,
Yeah.
2 are for sale.
And I looked at the hotel, and it is it's expensive.
Yeah, and it doesn't even look that nice either. If I remember, it's too nautically themed.
I mean,
It's
if anyone's willing to give us a free stay, then we're more than happy to take it.
yeah, and we'll do a video on it because we're both professional.
Nightcall sponsored by the Solent Hotel.
Yeah, exactly. We'll record a podcast on top.
Yeah.
Field record it.
Be a bit windy.
But yeah, I'll do that. I'll deal with that. Anyways, it's been lovely chatting with you. This is the first time we've chatted properly for a while.
Thank you very much for letting me into your bedroom. There's far more leather in here than I thought there would be.
Leather?
I'm pulling your leg.
Oh no.
Oh, I got you right at the end.
Yeah, really? Yeah, I've been busted. Yeah, it's a bit of a dungeon in here. No. I will. I mean, if you're open to it, I'd like to get you on for season 2.
Yeah, potentially.
And
find more interesting things to talk about than what I've talked about so far.
we'll try and do some shit next year as well.
Yeah.
That's what we should probably do. Do something first,
and then be
have
able
a
to talk
podcast.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'd have to do it, and then as soon as the thing's over, just not talk to each other.
Yeah.
So otherwise, we'll waste all the conversation.
Exactly.
On, like our friendship, as
resource,
opposed
it's
to on the
fuel.
podcast. Yeah, exactly.
Or we just do it. We record the podcast whilst we're on the show. Oh, God.
Just driving home from wherever we are.
That'd be quite cool, actually.
Yeah.
All right. Anyways.
Thanks for having me.
We're off.